Welcome to Leadership Comes Alive, brought to you by Leadershape Global. This is the show that will help you develop transpersonal leadership skills that improve business relationships and results. Learn to lead beyond the ego and bring about better performing, sustainable organizations. Accelerated learning in a virtual environment will make sure your leadership comes alive.
Hello everyone, this is Danielle Grant from Leadershape. Thank you for being with us today. And joining me today is Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Caroline is a powerhouse coach, blogger, a TEDx speaker, and author of the book aimed at empowering professional women called This Is Not the Career I Ordered. Caroline is VP of the Career Coaching Service at Ivy Tech Community College, with 110,000 students to be responsible for that area. So she has in-depth understanding of the issues that matter to our new generation of future leaders. Today we're speaking about how the importance of purpose is especially important to lead, particularly when a new generation of leaders will be continually reimagining the future of the world of work and of organizations. Caroline, it's a delight to welcome you to the show.
Thank you, Danielle. I am delighted to be with you.
So, Caroline, I have a few questions for you around our new generation of emerging leaders. So the first one is, what is the generational difference about our young future leaders from previous generations that means the importance of purpose is becoming ever more crucial to them?
It's an interesting look at the change in our population. So let me just spell out first. Most of us are familiar with the term millennials. They are also known as Generation Y. And their younger counterparts just coming up are Generation Z. And this younger generation of emerging leaders in Gen Z, and even those tail end younger millennials, truly value purpose over mission in an organization. And it's really driving their decisions. It's driving how they pursue career opportunities. It's even driving what they purchase. And it's a fascinating look at how this particular generation has set itself apart. They are extremely entrepreneurial. We are going to see many more startups from this generation of businesses. They are absolutely digital natives, so they are completely fluid with technology, and they are looking for shorter term educational opportunities that will launch them into the career world. So I think it's fascinating to look at how very different they are from even our millennials, who are their neighbors generationally.
So that is a really interesting difference. And last time out, John Knights was talking about how mission, vision, and purpose are related but different. So I think this is a very good follow-up to that, to look at what that means as the generations change in leadership. And many of us, even of older generations, have not clearly identified, and in some cases probably never even considered, what our purpose is. Do you think younger people have a greater insight into their purpose? Or is it just that they feel it's nice to think their employer does good in the world and not just drive for profit?
I love that question, Danielle. So let me say, my generation, to be clear to our audience, I'm a Generation X professional. And I grew up professionally where there was a company website or a poster on the wall that very clearly stated the mission and vision. And that was our mantra. That was something that we were very excited about, and it was top of mind for us every day. Now, Gen Z is different. They want the company that they work for, and even the brands that they buy, to stand for something. So in this case, these emerging leaders really focus on purpose in not only their work, but the organization for whom they work. And the focus is on a societal function and emotional benefit, even for consuming products, right? So they will choose what products they buy and consume because there is a connection to the greater good. So here, purpose represents how their unique contribution makes a difference in impacting the world. And it's a combination of functional emotion and societal benefit. And what I find really compelling is that right now, this generation is the largest consumer segment in the world in the year 2020. And I believe that's going to really impact our global economy.
I'm sure that's right, because I don't know to what degree the same is true outside of the UK, but certainly in my local market, we're seeing that brands that talk about the Soil Association and brands that reach out to fair trade brands are growing and growing in their accretion levels, and especially with younger purchasers. They kind of look at what that brand does in the world. Even Starbucks, they put a lot of emphasis on the walls of their stores as to the projects and the good that they do in the world to offset whatever ills capitalism may be seen to be bringing.
I agree with 100%. And it's interesting. This generation expects the brands they love to stand for something. And I've even seen and read about this concept of a noble purpose. And as you mentioned, we're seeing a big uptick in social responsibility campaigns in these companies around the world. And that is attracting these young leaders.
Just a thought for you today. Leadershape have an ICF accredited transpersonal coach training course. If you or someone you know may wish to know more about it, please visit leadershapeglobal.com/TLC. Do you think it's true, as some studies suggest, that workplace engagement matters less to Generation Z or Z than it did to previous generations? And to what extent is the importance of compensation and benefits relative to this new thought process?
Yeah, it's fascinating to me because, again, just looking from my vantage point on how different Gen Z is, and different from their millennial population before them, they are not driven by money. They're driven by doing good work. And as I mentioned, this concept of social responsibility. The culture is really important for them too. They're often called the change generation due to their passion and desire to make a difference through their work. And they want to see a connection between what they're doing and broader social or global impact. So this, what I would call the empowering work culture, is much more important to them than higher salary. And what I find interesting is that it's impacting retention in an organization. Pre-global pandemic, right? Because I realize we're in a very unique time around the world as we navigate through COVID-19. Pre-pandemic, these young emerging leaders were part of a talent war where there were so many opportunities. They could move around a lot, and they did. So organizations were competing to hire them. And the trick is, how do you retain this population? So the reality is they are so passionate about what is meaningful to them. Companies are having to pivot. And you mentioned the environment, a very important part of what they're interested in. And quite honestly, I'm grateful because I think we're learning a lot from this population, and it is changing. They're a catalyst for change in the work world, which we can all benefit from.
So just to build on that thought around the impact of COVID, how is COVID impacting these younger generations? How does it affect communications? How does it affect employment opportunity? What is unique about this generation and their experience of the COVID pandemic?
So they have a deep pride for organizations for which they work, and they do value that constant developmental feedback. And that is not different from their millennial counterparts, I might add. And they've had a challenging time in this remote work by necessity during COVID, our work from home reality. Even though they're very fluid with technology, they're craving connectivity. So I've seen some interesting work in how organizations can create that culture and that connection utilizing technology. They really value open conversations and they want to feel included. And I was speaking with a Gen Z leader the other day, I should say emerging leader. This is someone in an entry level role who aspires to really sharpen and hone her leadership skills. And she said, I want to hear from my superiors the good, the bad, and the ugly. She said, we want open conversations. We want to know what's working and what's not so we can get in there and be part of the solution.
Yeah, that speaks to me as well. So there's something around vulnerability. Everybody in the current situation feels vulnerable to COVID. It's something we could have never foreseen that had a global impact. And what does that vulnerability, how does that manifest for these younger leaders?
I think there's a beautiful shift in they are wanting to be vulnerable in their workplace, to be authentic and share failures, share successes and developmental opportunities. And they're also looking for their leaders, for their superiors to be honest and authentic and vulnerable. And when I think about transpersonal leadership, Danielle, it's just a beautiful connection to that, this new separation of ego and this authentic opportunity to fail forward and admit mistakes. And I think our Gen Z leaders are really looking for that. What is true and what is real? And how can they grow together and have a space of psychological safety with their colleagues and their leaders where they can learn together? And I find it quite refreshing.
Are you an executive coach and need to take your practice to the next level? Now you can by becoming an ICF accredited transpersonal leadership coach. Brought to you by Leadershape Global, Transpersonal Leadership Coach Training is an intensive learning program designed to differentiate your coaching practice. Learn to work with leaders so they can create performance-enhancing, caring, ethical, and sustainable cultures through being a transpersonal leader. And give your practice some TLC that will make a difference. Find out more at leadershapeglobalcom. That's leadershapeglobalcom.
And when I think back to the era in which both you and I grew into leadership roles, where a lot of it was about treat your staff as mushrooms, keep them in the dark and feed them. Yes, let's not go there. But it's a complete paradigm shift. So I would absolutely agree with you that the resonance of transpersonal leadership practices has to be something that is going to enable that younger generation to bring their full value into the workplace. So talking about their value to the workplace, how can organizations best position themselves to recruit and retain these valuable future leaders? What are the top tips that listeners can begin to consider for their organizations?
It's an interesting look at how there is a shift from relationships in an organization solely to service and volunteering. So it's not enough to be part of an organization that has a mission to pay it forward or do good work. These young professionals want to roll up their sleeves and actually do good work in their local community on that beautiful micro local level. We see this a lot in organizations. I think about the global technology company Salesforce. It is part of their company values and their company construct where they have so many hours in a given month where they expect their employees of all generations to get out there and honor a cause in the community that is meaningful to them. And they get paid time off to do that very thing. And as I said, it certainly resonates with the Gen Z professionals, but I feel like all of us can benefit from those shifts. We're also seeing an interest in invention and social entrepreneurship as a way to give these young professionals an opportunity to address social issues. So I look at a couple of the companies out there that may be top of mind for our global listeners. I think of Tom's Shoes, right? When you purchase shoes, you have an opportunity to give back, and the company will then give shoes to kids and adults in developing countries who need literally shoes on their feet. Or the Bombas socks movement, right? This opportunity to buy socks that you would wear, but then the pay it forward of the company to send socks to those in need. And those kinds of connections, not only working in organizations, but truly being brand ambassadors and buying those products and utilizing those services really resonates. So our employers, our organizations can keep this in mind, how to tie service to career development and leadership development.
I think that's a very welcome movement for us to all get on board with, Caroline. Thank you. It's a fascinating look at our younger generation. And we very often look at diversity and inclusion as being the obvious things around around gender or around sexual orientation or around ethnicity, and perhaps forget about the broader value of diversity in thinking that comes from including older, younger people in your thinking and creative processes, as well as those with other areas of cognitive diversity. And that diversity brings strength. So I really appreciate that peek into the minds of our young upcoming leaders. So thank you very much, Caroline. That's all for today's episode of Leadership Comes Alive. And I really want to thank Caroline Dowd-Higgins for being with us today and talking about our younger generation and the value of purpose for them. And also like to let you know that next time we'll be speaking with Greg Young about how COVID-19 demands us to understand complex adaptive systems. And that's going to be a fascinating discussion around how we all impact each other around the world. So thank you very much for listening. And thank you again, Caroline. And this is Danielle Grant from Leadershape Global.
You have been listening to Leadership Comes Alive, brought to you by Leadershape Global. Join us next time as we continue to explore transpersonal leadership skills that bring about better performing, sustainable organizations. We'll talk with you next time on Leadership Comes Alive. Visit leadershapglobal.com